Hi. I'm delighted to announce that we've got Donnya Piggott with us today, who is the Executive Director of Be Glad and the co-founder of Pink Coconuts in Barbados. So we're going to be discussing going global. Thank you so much for being with us today, Donnya. So it's actually a very big day in Barbados. There is an election going ahead. You've come, even so you can't vote in it because you're here, right?
Yes, I'm here.
So yeah, despite that, she's here. So I think that deserves almost another round of applause. But can we start by asking, what's it like in Barbados for LGBTQI people right now?
Well, in Barbados, Barbados is unlike a lot of the other Caribbean islands where we don't have a high rate of crime and we're not a very violent people. But just like most countries in the global south, we have issues that are a legacy of the colonial legacy that impede on our very, very homophobic laws. Yeah. And we have obviously religion, and because we know that homophobia and transphobia is layered. And so there's issues as it relates to colonialism, as it relates to women, and so on, and religion, that all make the fight against homophobia and transphobia very difficult sometimes.
Yeah, because you can be arrested for life for being being gay.
These laws aren't enforced, but we do have like a pretty homophobic law on the books in Barbados, like many other Caribbean islands.
Yeah, which again is the legacy of colonial.
Yeah,
exactly. So what are you guys doing then?
Well, I've been an activist, and I'm an activist for about 6-7 years, and so I founded the Barbados Gays, Lesbians, and Homosexuals Against Discrimination. And like most activists, we try to lobby governments, we try to change attitudes and behaviors through advocacy, through media, through social media, and so on. But it was through working this way that we became somewhat frustrated. While attitudes are changing, it's very difficult to change the laws. And so that's what Pink Coconuts is about. So Pink Coconuts is using tourism as a mechanism for change in the Caribbean. Tourism is all we do. Besides, it's tourism and rum. That's about it.
And tourism for the rum?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's
that kind of tourism.
It's sea and sand, and that's all we do. That's the core of the economies in the Caribbean. And so we're developing LGBT tourism so that the community can benefit, and we change company laws. So the incentive is, here is a market that your hotel wants to take on. But you have to have these inclusive policies for your staff and be involved in the community. Because we don't want you to just, talk the talk, but we need you to walk the walk. So Pink Coconuts is about inclusion and diversity training within the hotels and tourism companies and tour companies. And then we market these companies, market these hotels and tour companies to the markets, which are the UK, the United States, and Canada. Yeah. And it's a for-profit company, but obviously we have that bottom line, which is also social impact, because it's important to the work that we do.
And do you feel that you can change attitudes among communities as well? I mean, sort of, you can get businesses to be more inclusive, but do you think that you can change social attitudes as well?
Absolutely. The idea of commerce, it opens the door. So it opens the door, and then through the training and diversity training, we begin to change attitudes and behaviors within these companies. But even apart from that, it opens doors for the ordinary Barbadian to have an income. So, as an activist, you work so hard talking about, the reasons why, you should be inclusive and how it hurts communities. But it's a different spin on it when you talk about the benefits of it. In my 6-7 years of activism, I've never gotten such a remarkable response from when I started talking about commerce. So it opens doors, and like the ordinary man, a taxi driver, or somebody who's selling, their craft, they're like, well, I don't care, sure, bring them, and it's through that and through relationship building that you make a change. And oftentimes, homophobia, as well as issues with women's rights and transphobia and so on, are parallel with development. And it's no coincidence that the majority of countries that have these harsh laws also have issues with development. because it's parallel with education and religious countries and so on, they, block these, and it's because of development. So once we are able to bring everyone on board, not just the LGBT community, but so that it benefits everyone, then these communities can really become inclusive.
Yeah. And do you think that depending on the outcome of the election today, do you think the government might also start to become more inclusive?
Well, we're certainly hoping so. I know it's been rough. It's been a little rough the past 10 years. We've had a fairly homophobic government, right. And hopefully, by about 6 o'clock, we would.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Yeah, this time we would hope to elect our first woman prime minister in Barbados.
Great. Yeah.
It's just a big deal. It's so exciting.
Are there any questions from the floor? Let's have a look. Okay. Well, I will continue then. What lessons do you think you could? I mean, can the lessons that you've learnt in Barbados be applied elsewhere, in the Caribbean or elsewhere, in the world?
I think so, especially on the part of development. In some spaces, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, we have issues, with economies. But if you, I'll tell you a story about. That this activist from Uganda, he told me that there was a tour company, and this tour company wanted to bring a small group of lesbian and gay tourists to Uganda, and obviously they were afraid and they weren't sure if they really should take it on, but. After speaking to the government just made the way and gave them personal security from the government to come, because obviously, they will be losing out on some potential tourist dollars. And so I feel like economics has a role to play that must be strategic. It can be incentive-based, but at the same time, we have to use it as a door to change hearts and minds within these spaces. And I think it really can do it, but I think we have to be strategic about business and involve civil society, and have those, because I feel too that once you take care of a people, these people will take care of you. Yeah. And I think that's the thinking that we have to go forward with if we're really going to make change, overall in these developing countries. Yeah.
How much has the internet enable change as well? I mean, if people can, go on the internet and sort of figure out about who they may be or what and just from, if there are not people who are visible in communities around them who can sort of lead by example, how much has the internet changed things in places like Barbados?
Well, the internet has certainly brought us together. Yeah. So just about, a few years ago when, things began to change, with the Supreme Court ruling in the United States, it was a win for, a lot of countries as well, because, we depend on that support and we depend on that movement. So when things change in the United States, things get better for us too. Yeah. So the internet has certainly facilitated that, and, it's been a wave of change, and we've seen it in the way people talk in the Caribbean. And I mean, it's a little unfortunate that things might be going in a different way now, but it has begun to pick up momentum, and it can only continue to go forward from there.
By going in a different way, do you mean that the internet has also led to sort of more hate speech and more sort of, or?
Well, it's certainly given a platform to hate speech. So people can band together. I think it's a good thing and a bad thing, because we are able to have a large set of information so people can tap into, but at the same time, with the internet, it gives us what we feed it. We feed it, and it gives us right back what we want to hear. So in that way, we're kind of in a bubble sometimes, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, it gives us access to other people so that we can then begin to change attitudes and behaviors through conversation, through videos and so on, that has never happened before. So things are definitely in the right direction.
And what next? I mean, you sort of made the sort of the case for it in terms of tourism. Yeah. I mean, what next for sort of pushing diversity in Barbados?
Well, one of the prerequisites for Pink Coconuts is that we have to change the company policies.
Okay.
So what we do as an advocate, we then turn the hoteliers and the stakeholders into our advocates.
Right.
Because, me by myself or a group of young people and so on certainly don't have the power as a huge hotelier in the Caribbean. Yeah. So when we have the hoteliers on our side, then the governments listen to them. They change the economy, they help in terms of development, and so their voices are a lot bigger than ours.
Yeah.
And we have them as advocates and allies, and that way things change.
Yeah. And do you feel that, is the majority of the tourism industry an advocate and ally now, or is it sort of 50-50 or sort of 70, 30?
I think that's a difficult question.
Yeah, sorry, it's a horrible.
No. It's fine. I think oftentimes people who are in agreement are very silent,
Okay.
and those who are divisive and probably some really conservative viewpoints can be very loud. But I don't think in any way that's reflective of the majority. I don't think so. We're a very educated population in the Caribbean. Yes, religion plays a huge role, and cultural practices and so on. But with globalizations and because our countries are becoming more and more developed, then our thinking is becoming developed as well. And so we're making the changes. Just in Trinidad, the laws have just changed, and in Belize.
Really?
So it's the wave of change is really making its way, and we're just hoping that the momentum picks up, and then the economies now can benefit from it.
Yes, because isn't it still that 36 out of 53 Commonwealth countries still criminalize homosexuality?
Yeah.
Yeah, in some form or other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of those, I guess the laws are really hard to move, and we believe that the laws, do impact the behaviors of the community, but they certainly don't reflect them all. Yeah.
Gosh, well, thank you so much for your time
today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, it was great. Wonderful, thank you so much.